The foundation of all major systems, whether an empire or a tech startup, starts with a single point of internal order. In the Confucian classic The Great Learning, the journey to world peace begins with illustrating bright virtue, Ming Ming De. This is the process of cleaning your own lens so you can see the world clearly. It suggests that a leader must first regulate their own heart and mind before they can ever hope to regulate a family, a corporation, or a nation. Without this internal alignment, any external success is just a house of cards waiting for the first gust of wind. Jesus mirrored this logic when he told his followers, "You are the light of the world." He wasn't talking about a physical glow, but an internal state of being that influences the environment. If your eye is healthy, your whole body is full of light, but if your internal code is dark, the darkness is absolute. Both philosophies agree on a practical reality: the self is the source code of the entire system. If there is a bug in the source code, like greed, ego, or dishonesty, that bug will eventually crash the largest of organizations. Real power doesn't come from controlling others, it comes from the light of self-mastery that allows others to see their own path more clearly. We often think of faith as a religious emotion, but in the world of high-stakes business, faith is a cold, calculated strategic framework. Jensen Huang, the CEO of NVIDIA, spent 2 decades pouring resources into a specialized type of computing for AI at a time when the market barely existed and experts questioned the move. This is the logic of faith in action. It is the certainty of things hoped for and the evidence of things not yet seen. Huang wasn't guessing. He was operating on a conviction of cause and effect, believing that the demand for massive parallel processing was a mathematical inevitability. This mirrors the biblical principle of planting seeds in a season where there is no rain in sight. In the world of the core code, faith is the ability to ignore the noise of current trends to focus on the signal of future reality. Both the spiritual and the corporate masters know that by the time a trend is visible to everyone, the opportunity to lead it has already passed. True foresight requires the discipline to stand alone in your conviction, building the foundation while the world is still looking at the past. Success is simply the moment when your long-term faith finally collides with the world's reality. Strength is often born from the total absence of resources. In the history of Israel and the life of Jesus, the wilderness was a place of extreme scarcity, intended to strip away all external dependencies. It is a psychological and strategic forge. When a system is denied water, bread, or political protection, it is forced to activate a deeper survival code. This is the logic of extreme constraints. The very limitations that should destroy you become the exact pressure required to innovate. In the wilderness, you don't survive by being the biggest, you survive by becoming the most spiritually and mentally resilient. Lao Tzu captured this same core code through the metaphor of water. He taught that the softest thing in the world can overcome the hardest because it does not fight. It adapts and persists. This is the power of the weak. When you stop trying to overpower your environment with raw force and instead lean into your constraints, you develop a flexibility that rigid, strong systems lack. A massive oak tree breaks in a storm, while the supple bamboo bends and survives. Weakness, in this context, is not a failure of character. It is a sophisticated strategic state that allows you to outlast the strong by moving with the flow of reality rather than against it. In physics, dark matter is the invisible substance that makes up the vast majority of the universe's mass. You cannot see it, but without its gravitational pull, galaxies would fly apart. Modern business operates on the same principle. We focus on the visible 5%, the balance sheets, the offices, and the marketing, but the system is actually held together by the invisible 5%, the corporate culture, the collective integrity, and the unspoken trust between people. If this invisible mass is missing, the organization, no matter how large, will eventually disintegrate because there is no internal gravity to hold it together. Jesus used the mustard seed to explain this logic of the unseen. He described it as the smallest of seeds that grows into a tree large enough to shelter others. This is the logic of the micro-input. A single tiny act of integrity or a small shift in culture is like a mustard seed. It is invisible at first, but it carries the blueprint for the entire future system. The most powerful forces in a business are the seeds planted in private, the way a leader treats an employee when no one is watching, or the decision to stay honest when a lie would be easier. These invisible dark matter elements are what determine the final weight and stability of your empire. Most people navigate life using analogies. They do things a certain way because that's how they've always been done. Elon Musk disrupted this by using first principles, a logic that strips away all assumptions until you are left with the raw physics of the situation. If you want to build a rocket, you don't look at the market price of a rocket, you look at the cost of the raw materials, carbon fiber, aluminum and fuel, and build upward from that bedrock. This is the code of radical truth. It ignores social convenience, tradition, and face to deal directly with the absolute essence of a problem. Jesus demanded this same level of radical clarity in human character. He famously said, "Let your yes be yes and your no be no." In a world of diplomatic layers and social masks, this is a first principles approach to the soul. It means removing the middlemen of ego and pretense to speak and act from the bedrock of your true intent. Whether you are calculating the chemistry of a battery or the integrity of a promise, the logic is the same. Any layer of fluff or half-truth is a source of failure. To build something that lasts, you must strip away the noise until only the fundamental truth remains. In every ambitious journey, there is a point known as the Great Filter. It is the moment where the project becomes too big for the creator's ego to handle. Most businesses and leaders fail here because they try to protect their own image, power, or comfort. The path of the cross in Jesus' teaching represents the ultimate filter, the requirement to lay down your life or your ego to achieve a higher purpose. It is the logic of death and resurrection. To gain a world-changing impact, the small, selfish version of yourself must first die so that a larger, more inclusive vision can take its place. This mirrors the Eastern concept of breaking the ego attachment to reach nirvana. The logic is that yourself is actually a limitation. It is a filter that distorts reality based on your fears and desires. By breaking the ego, you remove the distortion and become a vessel for a much larger force. This is the final exam for any leader. Can you move past your own self-interest? Only those who pass this filter are permitted by the laws of cause and effect to carry the weight of true global influence. If you cannot lose yourself, you will eventually be crushed by the very thing you tried to build. When a system, whether it is a global corporation or a spiritual movement, reaches a certain size, it faces a final challenge, the limit of raw power. You can rule a small group through force or control, but you cannot rule the world that way. To achieve universal scale, a system must transition from rule by force to rule by resonance. This is where the Western love thy neighbor and the Eastern great harmony, Datong, converge into a single functional code. The logic is mechanical. For a system to grow infinitely, it must provide value to every node it touches. If it becomes parasitic or exploitative, the global environment will eventually trigger an immune response to destroy it. The Great Harmony is the ultimate state of a balanced system where individual interests are aligned with the collective good. Jesus' command to love your neighbor as yourself is the practical algorithm for this state. It isn't just a moral suggestion, it is the only social architecture that prevents friction from burning the system down. As a business expands across borders and cultures, it survives only if its core code is inclusive enough to benefit the employee in Malaysia, the investor in New York, and the customer in London simultaneously. When your logic shifts from "what can I take" to "how can we harmonize," you remove the ceiling on your growth. True scale is found when the world no longer sees you as an invader, but as an essential part of its own survival.